Welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast, where the legal industry gets real. I'm your host, Eda Rosa, legal consultant, speaker, and founder of Eda Rosa LLC and the Limitless Paralegal Academy. This isn't your stuffy legal studies school lecture. We're talking mindset, money, modern workflows, and how to build a career and a life you don't need a vacation from. Let's cut the fluff, raise the bar, and change the game one conversation at a time. If you like what you hear, feel free to share and send us your feedback. Now let's talk paralegal. In a profession built on advocacy, many legal professionals forget how to advocate for themselves. In this episode, I get to speak with Luisa Anderson, paralegal, podcaster, writer, and creative entrepreneur, to talk about reclaiming your voice in the legal industry. From burnout to transformation, Luisa shares how podcasting and creative expression can become powerful tools for healing, growth, and reconnecting with your purpose. Listen in for more. Welcome to the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. I'm your host, Eda Rosa, and today I have Luisa, which I had the honor to be on her podcast. And if you haven't, please check that out. We will leave it in the description so you guys can see what I did and what I said on her podcast and follow her. But without further ado, I want to talk to Luisa today about paralegal, but in a non-traditional route, and how you guys can take steps towards that if that's something that you're looking forward to, or maybe just kind of tapping into your inner non-traditional paralegal within the traditional route. So it doesn't really matter what route you're trying to go for. But Luisa, please introduce yourself to the audience first, and then we can dive in.
Of course. So I'm Luisa. I am a paralegal. I am a podcaster, and I love all things. I love talking about all things related to using your voice. So, as much as that is in the legal world, and as much as that is in podcasting, and I think that's where the two overlap for me. Um, for me, I had a spiritual awakening that sort of changed the trajectory of my life. So I've been a paralegal for over 15 years now in one capacity or another, with a really deep focus all on disability law, whether it's Social Security disability or private insurance disability. I have done a lot of it with a lot of other malpractice and um, medical stuff and personal injury thrown in there throughout the years, workers' comp, all of the things. But today, really, what I love most about what I do is I love the empowerment of using our voices for, especially for Latina women. I've gone back to this original passion that kind of led me into being a paralegal, which is sort of being the bridge of, in my community. And yeah, that's what I focus on today. Everything that I do and everything that I take on is really with that purpose.
Yeah, so we have similar stories as far as walking out of the non-traditional route and really looking with a purpose for our podcast, right? So very similar. Of course, we're both Latina, so naturally we're gravitated to each other. And I think that's so rare nowadays, where we can actually see synergy versus diversity, especially in the current narrative. So I want to focus on that on this episode. I want to focus on more synergy about how we can gather around and really find our purpose and find our tap into our own communities, right? Whatever that looks like. A lot of people see a community as within similarities, right? So I was having this conversation with my 7-year-old the other day, and we were doing what was it? They don't call it was during Hispanic Heritage Month, but they now call it Multicultural Day. And they talk a lot about cultures around the world, and they teach them little tidbits and religions and traditions from all over the world, which I appreciate. And so he comes home and he has this project. And in that project, one of the questions was, if you are bicultural, what are your cultures? And so he asked me if he was bicultural. And I said, no, you're not, because Daddy and I are both Puerto Rican. And he goes, well, that's weird. It looks like I'm the only one. So apparently in his class, there's a lot of bicultural and there's a lot of, which is great. I love that, and that's something I appreciate. And I was like, when did one culture becomes such a like very minor thing, right? And so we had this hard conversation about the project and kind of how, how Daddy and I are both from the same culture and the same island. And he's like, well, that's easy. And so, he started looking at the flags and all the tradition and things like that. And it was a great time. So I love it to see this topic in a 7-year-old boy's, eyes. It is very different. And I actually have similar conversations with my children because I want that. I want to see different perspectives. I want to see it from a non-biased, very, I don't want to say innocent, but very raw perspective, right? And so I often have these conversations with my kids and I honor that every day. And I also suggest that you guys do the same. Have these conversations
Yes.
with your little ones, your nieces, if you're not a parent, any, kids, your godchildren. I have plenty of them. And so anything like that, really have the conversation with young ones, young children, and the ones that are going into their 20s, really get yourself some perspective when it comes to these topics that we talk about. So let's get into it. That was a
Yeah.
long introduction, but let's talk about how you broke the molds in the non-traditional route and kind of what led you there and where you see yourself going.
So I love that. First of all, I want to kind of piggyback off of what you said because I absolutely love it. We just talked, and I have a 9-year-old too. And I think they call it intercultural, multicultural day at her school is one of the most beautiful things. And her school that she was at, we're at a new school now, it was so diverse and so beautiful. And it was like a personal experience for me too, which led me into making sure that my older son, who didn't have as a diverse of experience, that we sort of had those conversations around the dinner table. But I would go to like the birthday parties, all the kids' birthday parties, the classroom. And oh my gosh, I would come out so enriched, like with all these parties, with all these different cultures. I feel like there is so much that we gain from that, that I really do hope, just to sort of piggyback off of what you said, that we all take the time to gain perspective because I think there's so much beauty when we can appreciate each other's cultures. It's just beautiful. But
Yeah.
um to talk about how I broke the mold. So I would say my path actually started very traditional. Like I am Dominican first generation, and my parents to this day like don't fully speak English. Like neither one of them fully speaks English. But what happened was my family came. So I grew up with my dad's family without my mom's family. My dad is one of 13. And they each have at least, like, my aunt has two children and she stands out. They all have between 3 and 6 kids. And I grew up with all these people. Like, in a block, we owned a block. And that was the point in which that I think that sort of defined I was going to be in the legal field because my family started buying real estate really quickly when they got here. What I realized at some point, I think my dad was on like his third transaction of like his third, he would buy multifamily buildings. And I realized that we're just signing all these papers and nobody has any idea what we're signing. And I was there to translate. So as a kid, I'm translating to things that I don't even understand. So obviously not serving them. And that's what led me into becoming a paralegal. And I think the first way in which I broke the mold was, and maybe not so much, chasing the American dream. I was like just looking for more money, right? And I went into insurance. I lived in New Hampshire at the time. There wasn't a whole lot of need for bilingual paralegals, which is how I had gotten my first two paralegal jobs in Boston. And then it was kind of like, well, what is there that translates into the experience that I had, which was disability law at that time? And I went into long-term disability with insurance companies. And it was the first time that I realized like money is not the solution, like in life in general. It was like, I don't know. I mean, I was a young adult, but it was the first time just because I get all these claims of people who were passing away and people, who had these really chronic illnesses. And I was sending them, $22,000 checks and whatever, but that wasn't changing anything. Like it just really wasn't. And so I felt purposeless is the reason I bring that up. I stopped feeling the purpose because I started to realize that in one way or another, people were preparing for this, right? When you buy, you have to intentionally buy long-term disability benefits, right? Um, and I just realized that people in one way or another, instead of being intentional about the way that they lived their lives, it was just they were using this benefit as sort of preparation for living their lives in not necessarily a healthy way. And I left that. And then the reason I left that was sort of multi-faced. My husband of 10 years came home and like what I at the time perceived to be unexpectedly asked for a divorce. And just the way that our lives were going, that's just not what I expected that was going to happen next. Like that wasn't it. That prompted a spiritual awakening for me that made me realize how out of purpose I had been living. Like, what was I working for? What was all this education for? What was anything for? And that's, I think, when I broke the mold. That's when I think I started to sort of realize that just following what society had told me to do had led me down a path that was very unfulfilling. I wasn't actually helping people. I didn't feel like I was actually helping people. I didn't feel like I was making a difference. And that initial thing that brought me to being a paralegal, which was feeling like the bridge, like that bridge between my culture and that bridge between, understanding the legalities of everything that we're going through, it was gone. And I fell flat, didn't know who I was, didn't know where I was going, why I was doing anything. And when I had the awakening, I realized that that wasn't a way to live. Like I was alive. I was just alive. Like I wasn't living. And that led me into starting to think about how to do things. And I started a podcast and sort of this, when you do, it's like, what is it called? It's called the term like when you're overly obedient. It was like that. It was like I knew that I had to speak up because I had always been like the human being that wanted to be in the back of the room and I didn't want to be in the front of the room. Um, and I started podcasting. I started a spiritual podcast was my first thing. And I realized that a lot of the topics that I was talking about were a little too like unwelcome, I think, at the time, a little too deep, and I think the audience wasn't necessarily landing because it came for me from a place of what I was going through, just sort of having this spiritual awakening and believing that, when I Googled my symptoms, this is like one of my favorite stories to tell. When I Googled my symptoms, it told me I had schizophrenia. Google told me I had schizophrenia.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. The good thing is, if I'd still been married, like my husband and I, the conclusion we would have come to is that I needed to go to a mental health institute. Like that's what we would have come to. So it was good that it happened when it did in the way that it did, of course. But I started the podcast, and then it was just this realization that my message was worth sharing, that I had a voice, and that in fact, the life that was laid out for me, it didn't have to be that way. I could build something with my own hands, like with my own sweat, tears, overnights, and like figuring out the process of what it means to start a podcast, especially when like I didn't know anyone else at all who had started a podcast, who even had that ambition. So that was the first step, I think, that really was like, okay, I can build something. I can create something that's my own, both personally and professionally.
I love that. And it's so funny that you say that in your story because I also coach paralegals for, that's part of one of our services. And I had a paralegal with a similar story that was going through a divorce. She was actually pregnant during her divorce and she found out that her husband had another child as well.
Oh,
So she was going through it, and as women, and funny enough, my best friend is pregnant due any day now. We're like literally on edge. Everyone's on call. And she asked always, like when she got married, she asked me for advice. When she, got pregnant, she asked me for advice. And now that she's having the baby, she's asking me for advice. And I said, I'm going to tell you something that no one told me. I've had two baby showers. I've grown, I'm the youngest one out of my family. So I've seen plenty of examples, but no one had the audacity nor the gall to tell me that you lose yourself in marriage, in parenthood. You as a woman, literally, this is a scientific, biological thing that a woman goes through, regardless of how hard they fight. when you're going through your pregnancy or even surrogacy, it happens when you become a guardian in general and you have this responsibility of your partner or a child or whatever, some way, shape, or form. When you become a guardian or a partner, your biological body says, now I have to give literally everything I have to this human being so that they can survive for X amount of years, right?
Yeah.
And so your body literally goes through that transition whether you like it or not. Nobody
Yeah.
tells you this. I went through a lot of therapy sessions to figure out where I went awry, right? Where I let off the lane. And so I started talking a lot about this, and every time I meet like another woman that I see is going through it, you can see the woman going through it, you can read it in their face. And I've become so aware of it that my husband always makes fun of me because he's like, you're making new adult friends, which is very uncommon, right?
Yeah.
Like after you're an adult. And so, but in rare places, like I was out at Burlington, we were at lunch at a, Mediterranean restaurant, and I think my third one was at a get together. Like it's just very like random places and within like a month or two, but awareness is key in everything. So when
Yeah.
I'm very aware and I tap into other feelings, I look at them and I say, you're doing fine. You're doing great. I don't want you to lose yourself in the process. And so my best friend is a therapist, so she has heard it all. And she's like, I have what did she say to me? I have a realistic, idea of parenthood because I've heard it all, seen it all, throughout her years of, of being a therapist. And I was like, it's one thing to hear the stories. It's another one to live the story. And so just don't lose yourself in the process. Don't lose yourself in motherhood, in, being a wife, because they were together for 10, they've been together for like 11 years. What they didn't do in 11 years, they did in 1 year. They got married, they got a house, and they had a kid. Like that's literally in 1 year, that's what
Uh,
they've done, right? The baby's due in 10 days. So, it is what it is. And so I said to her, I'm like, just don't lose yourself in the
mhm.
marriage, in the motherhood, in all these pivotal moments, right? And the
Yeah.
excitement is beautiful. And cherish this moment and remember why you got married. Remember why you decided to have a child with this partner, and remember why you decided to make such a big step to home ownership. Because all these pivotal moments in our lives, we either do it because society tells us it's what we need to do, it's the next thing.
Yep.
We do it because everybody else around us is doing it, or we do it because we think we want it. And then when we have it, we're like, oh no, what did I just do?
Yeah.
So, the reality of society and the labels that they place specifically for females. I can't speak on males because I'm not one, but I can say for females, it's a journey, and it took us a long time. And for me, I had the added bonus, quote unquote, that I lost my father right before I had my
Mm,
first child, right? So I was grieving, I was going through pregnancy, and then I was going into motherhood. We too had just bought the house, gotten married, the whole 9 years. So that's what I told her. I'm like, she's like, but you took it on so well. And I was like, yeah, I'm a great actress. I must say I'm a wonderful actress. And so, what I want you guys to understand through this conversation, and of course, we're going to add little more tidbits, is don't lose yourself in the process.
yeah.
Enjoy the journey, lead with intention. Your choices that you make must be yours, not anybody else's. Take ownership, take accountability. If you made a mistake, own it. I made the mistake. I did something wrong. How do I fix it? How do I not do it again? Own that mistake. Don't look at it as a failure. You only can do with what you have, right? So you can only fix with the tools you have. So if you need more tools, go get it. Go therapy, do
Yeah.
meditation, do prayer, whatever you're most attracted to. Either way, it's the same thing. Meditation, prayer, a lot of people don't realize this. It's the same thing. You're putting your mind somewhere else and you're focusing on this one thing. And that's what you need to do all of it, right? Like through
Yeah.
all of your journey. And so I want people to really, really hone in on what Luisa just said, right? Like there was a divorce, supposedly it was unexpected. She probably saw the red flags a long time ago and ignored it because she was in it, right? She was focused on getting what she wanted, but then she didn't know what she wanted because probably she didn't know who she was. And so all these little things that we learn, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I learned too late." That's not true. You didn't learn too late. You learned on time. Everything happens for a reason, right? And you're not, it's, you're not old, you're not, what is it? You're not too old, you're not too young, you're just right, okay? Like Goldilocks, okay? Goldilocks. So take a page from her book. I've been referencing that story all, like for the past 6 months. So I might as well just like buy and purchase the story. Anyways, I wanted to take a pause there and I wanted to kind of highlight what you just said there.
Yeah.
So this happened to you. You did your podcast, which for me was I opened the podcast out of spite because I didn't hear a legal education podcast that actually talked about what they needed to talk about, like these conversations. They all talk about everything else that you can learn in a CLE, but nobody really actually talks about what actually you need in order
Yeah.
to survive the legal industry and really thrive. And so this is really what inspired me to do the podcast. But I was also looking for myself and seeing who Eda was without the labels, right?
Yeah.
Removing all the societal labels, all those um, expectations that I thought other people were expecting of me, right? Which is very common. Again, these are all schizophrenic, apparently, symptoms. I learned something new today. Um, Yeah, yeah. But anyway, so I want you to add on to this, right? Because you created this podcast. It was an outlet for you. And I wanted to kind of highlight the part where you said it was too raw, it was too strong, right? And it probably didn't land with the audience. The truth is, half of the things we say, we do, we lead with will land when it lands. The
Yeah.
good thing about the podcast is that it lives on, right? It's not going to get erased one day, maybe, hopefully not. But and it lives on. So it may not land today, but it may land 2, 3 years from now, which is what happened to me, right? I saw the signs. I saw the signs. And I saw them, right? And I saw the red flags and I knew I was going down the wrong path. And I was literally, it was almost like a higher self kind of version saying, like, what are you doing? You're going into a car wreck, this is what, what do you're literally self-sabotaging yourself. And so I got to the point where I was like, yeah, you're right. Like I'm talking to myself again, schizophrenic. Um, but I wanted to highlight that because a lot of people are feeling this way, especially now, right? It's the holidays. Well, by the time this probably publishes, it won't be, but right now in this moment, in this time capsule, it's the holidays and we need to focus on, all the other things, right? Family, trauma, generational, biases, you name it, there's plenty of it, right? Especially around the dinner table and especially around this time, all your suppressed emotions just seem to float up. So let's talk about that. You open the podcast, you change it up a little bit, and then what happens?
In the legal world, details win cases, and missing one can cost everything. That's why we're proud to be sponsored by a firm, Investigative Solutions. They partner with attorneys and legal teams to uncover the facts that matter most, from background investigations and witness locates to surveillance and asset searches. A firm, Investigative Solutions is discreet, thorough, and laser-focused on supporting strong case strategy so you can focus on advocating for your clients. If you need answers, not assumptions, visit affirmpi.com and schedule a free consultation. Affirm Investigative Solutions. Investigate before you litigate.
Yeah, so that was my first podcast. And then the podcast, my most recent podcast, Flying Upstream, that you were a guest on, is sort of that you spoke of earlier that you brought on. This one with my co-host Kristen Medeiros, it's the combination and the realization that we should only be living from intuition. We should only be living from the choices that we own and owning those things. Like, whatever choices we make sure they're coming from the right place, not from the external noise, and that we're walking amongst them. And so that part of it from my first podcast, which does still live on, and I totally agree with you. I've left it out there because I know that there will come a time. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, so many people will resonate. So I absolutely appreciate that. But what happened was after I made that conversion from my first podcast to flying upstream, is I started to realize that there were so many stories like, like yours and mine, where it's like we don't know why we started, or we don't know who we are really. Like we may recall, like for me specifically, I'll speak for myself. Like I could remember why I started being a paralegal. I could remember why I started the podcast, but I couldn't necessarily remember like what am I doing with it? Like what is the purpose? What is the purpose? I think the moment I realized like the moment I know what my purpose is, or at least start like living and navigating it to find it, right? Because I think a lot of people get really stuck in like, I don't know what it is. But often what I have found in my own experience is until you start walking, the path isn't going to appear. Like if you're just sitting down over here thinking, I always say like, energy and like the higher power, whatever higher power you believe in, for me, it's source, is like source favors action. Take action, movement. Let's go. Like, if you don't know what that is, you have to move. And the podcasts, I think both of them have been a reflection of that, of me moving and sort of getting to this place where it's like, okay, now that I'm walking the path, I don't know if I'm at my purpose. I don't know if this is the only thing. I don't believe that this is the only thing that I'm here to do. But I do believe the podcasts and this whole experience and the divorce have done for me is it has solidified who I am. And
Yeah.
now when I enter a room, I'm not seeking validation. Like I know who I am. I am here. Like my presence says it all. And then we can take it from there. Versus before, I think there was this sense of like, like these labels, how do these labels land? How do the other people receive that I'm a paralegal, that I'm a podcaster? And I think it's a beautiful thing now where I find myself, where is the realization that I get to create and I get to be whatever I want to be. Like I just have to choose and take action. Like that's it.
I love that. I love that for you. I love that for anyone. Lead with intention has always been my slogan. But this year, now that we're talking about, action, in the beginning of the year, my best friend and I, we sit down, we write letters to our future self, and then we read it in the year after. So we're due to do that in January. And so this year, one of my things on my vision board or was intention, right? Everything I do, I have to have an intention. I have to have a purpose. I had to lead with that, right? Because for my daughter's 9, yeah, my daughter's 9. She's about to turn 10 next year, which is a big deal for us. And, every day when she says, Mommy, I love you, I say, but why? Why do you love me? And it's not to be contradicted or it's not to get validation or appreciation or anything like that. I want to know why she loves me. Is it because I'm just her mom? Is it because I'm her caregiver? Is it because I show her the respect that she needs, the love that she needs? Like what is the reason as to why she loves me? Because that will show me one day when she can actually respond to that question. That'll show me what I'm doing good, right? Where I'm going right or wrong, right? Depending on the response. And so yesterday I asked her every time, because she said that, and she looked at me and she goes, Mom, why do you ask me that? You always ask me why I love you. Can't you just accept my love? And I'm like, absolutely. I accept it every single day through your hugs, your kisses, your I love yous, your everything. I accept your love every single day. I never reject it. But I want to know what I'm doing right so that I can continue to do that. And it's not about just taking the action, right? Like feeding her,
Right, right.
right? Helping her with her homework, like just regular stuff. Is it my presence? Do I calm you? And so now she says I'm her emotional support human. And so that's her way of saying that she loves me. And so little by little, one day she'll get there. So my dad used to do that to me. And then the day he passed away was the day I was actually able to respond. And so that was very much closure for me. And so I said, okay, if I ever have kids, if God ever blesses me or source, whatever, blesses me with a kid, I'm going to do the same thing because one day I'll get the real answer. And so I want to end this episode with that. I know, right? It's strong, guys. I get it. But I want to end this episode with that, right? Lead with intention, make choices that value you, that is your value, right? What adds up to you? What is what your 1 plus 1? And now that we're getting into the new year, everybody's ready for the vision boards and the resolutions again. But look back at what you accomplished already, what you had set already, and what hasn't been accomplished, and see why the other ones weren't
Mm.
accomplished,
That's
right?
beautiful. That's
Nobody does
beautiful.
that.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh, yeah. It'll show you, right? It'll show you so many things. It'll show you the why. Like if you dig into it a little, the why. Is it part of my path? Is it part of my journey? Is this something external or is this something that I really want if I didn't take action on it? So I love that. I think that's beautiful.
Do you have any last tidbits for our audience or anything you want to tell them before we sign off?
I always sign off with the same thing. I just implore you to take a moment for yourself. Just I my first time meditating was 2 minutes in the smallest closet in my house before the kids came to find me. And those 2 minutes changed my life. And I know it sounds crazy, but meditation changed my life, and that's what it began with. So I implore you, if you don't know what your purpose is, or if you're seeking something and you don't know what it is, if you don't know where you're going, and even if you do, take a minute to just be with yourself. It's amazing, like what whole world lives inside you that you may not be paying attention to right now.
Oh, and actually, I have a really great exercise that one of my therapist friends told me. So if you can't meditate, like close your eyes and plug in because your mind is so chaotic. What she told me to do was, because I'm like anxiety to the nth degree. My kids make fun of me all the time. What she told me to do was look at a blank wall, just with nothing, no color, no nothing, just a blank wall. Try to get a wall that has literally nothing, no frames, no like mirror, nothing, right? And look at it for as long as possible. And it's the same effect as meditation, but your eyes are focused on something versus trying to focus internal, and your brain will naturally meditate. It'll go into a meditative state. So try that out. Try prayer, try whatever you think works for you. Journaling is a great way for meditation and to release your brain. If you're one of those 3 a.m. people that wake up at 3 a.m. because your brain turned on, because you have a lot on your mind, write it down. Mel Robbins actually says it all the time and promotes that exercise. Write down what your brain is thinking, and that way it's gone, right? Like that's it. Your brain sees that it's in writing and it'll shut off. All those work. I've tried them, so go for it.
Yes, I
Oh my
second that.
goodness.
Yes, I agree. All of them. I do all of them. I have lists everywhere because it can't be in my brain. Otherwise, I can't be present, which is the most important thing to me at this stage. And yeah, I thank you so much for having me on. This has been amazing. And
Oh,
I really do hope that, for listeners, just you create your own path and where you start is totally up to you.
absolutely. Love that, Luisa. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Until next time, until justice is served, I'll be here, guys.
Hey Legal Pros, are you ready to stop playing small? The Limitless Paralegal Academy is officially open, offering powerhouse courses, real-world tools, and expert-led training to help you build the career and life you actually want. We're not stopping there. The Limitless Paralegal Tour is hitting the road. We're bringing the mindset shifts, career strategies, and community straight to your city with epic speakers, actionable sessions, and zero boring PowerPoints. This isn't your average CLE. This is your legal career reimagined. Join the Academy, meet us on tour, become the legal pro everyone remembers. Visit limitlessparalegals.academy.com to enroll and grab your ticket now. Be bold, be brilliant, but most importantly, be limitless.